the delay that redefined control. It wasn't framed as hesitation. It was called due diligence, a short pause to gather more clarity. A reasonable delay meant to protect the downside, but that pause quietly changed who was in control and who was no longer waiting. This matters now because modern power rarely disappears through loss. It transfers through delay. The moment one side waits for certainty, another side uses time itself as leverage. And once control shifts, it rarely announces a handover. The billionaire at the center of this story believed deeply in timing, not rushing, not reacting, moving only when the picture was clear enough to justify commitment. That discipline had built credibility, stability, and trust across the empire. The reveal began with a decision that felt unfinished. A complex initiative required joint commitment across multiple parties. Everyone agreed in principle. The logic was sound, the opportunity real. But execution required alignment that felt slightly premature. Some variables were still unknown, some reactions unpredictable. So the billionaire delayed, not indefinitely, just long enough to be sure. The delay was communicated carefully. Partners were reassured. Internal teams were told preparation was ongoing. No one objected. In fact, most people appreciated the restraint. It felt professional, responsible, controlled. But control has a hidden dependency. It assumes time remains neutral. The reveal deepened as others began adjusting around the delay. Partners explored alternatives quietly. Internal teams shifted focus. Momentum dispersed. Nothing dramatic happened, but something subtle did. The initiative stopped feeling alive. What had once felt like a shared moment became a future placeholder. Conversations lost urgency. Follow-up slowed. The delay did not stop the process. It thinned it. The billionaire noticed it emotionally first. Meetings felt less focused. Language shifted from, was still assumed but no longer reinforced. Then came the first signal. A counterpart made a small, unilateral move. Not hostile, not definitive. Just enough to create optionality elsewhere. The delay had opened space, and space invites substitution. The billionaire still believed control remained intact. Nothing had been signed. Nothing had been finalized. The leverage was assumed to be symmetrical. It wasn't, because delay does not freeze the board. It redistributes advantage. And the moment one side waits to protect certainty, the other gains freedom to reshape the outcome. The conflict was forming quietly, not through disagreement, but through time itself. And by the time control visibly shifts, delay has all read. The ship became undeniable when alignment began dissolving at the edges. What was once a shared initiative slowly fragmented into parallel conversations. Partners stopped referencing the original timeline. Internal teams began planning contingencies instead of execution. The delay had created room, and room invites divergence. The reveal deepened as updates grew less concrete. Calls ended with polite summaries instead of next steps. Follow-ups were promised, then postponed. Everyone remained cordial, but no one behaved as if the decision was still central. Control existed in theory, not in motion. The billionaire sensed imbalance during a routine check-in. A partner spoke confidently about alternative paths, framing them as harmless exploration. Nothing was committed, they said, just keeping options open. The language was casual, but the implication was sharp. The delay was no longer neutral. By waiting, the empire had signaled uncertainty, not weakness, but hesitation. And hesitation invites others to protect themselves. Each side adjusted quietly, reducing dependence on a decision that might never arrive. Internally, the same pattern emerged. Teams reduced investment. Talent was reassigned. The initiative slipped lower on priority lists. No one declared it dead. It simply lost gravity. The conflict sharpened when the billionaire realized that restarting momentum would now require more than a decision. It would require persuasion. Trust had thinned. Assumptions had changed. The window where control came from timing had closed. The emotional weight settled heavily. Control had not been taken. It had been surrendered. The delay had shifted leverage without confrontation. Others had adapted while the empire waited. And adaptation, once complete, does not reverse easily. The billionaire understood the deeper truth now. Control is not held by those who decide last. It is held by those who make time matter. By delaying to protect certainty, the empire had allowed others to rewrite the landscape. What once felt like caution now looked like abdication. The conflict was no longer about gathering more information. It was about whether authority could still be reclaimed, or whether delay had permanently redefined who shaped the outcome and who merely responded to it. The next step would force a reckoning. Act now and accept diminished leverage, or continue waiting and confirm its loss. Time, once neutral, was no longer on their side. The conflict reached its peak when the billionaire realized that every additional day of waiting was no longer buying clarity. It was paying rent to uncertainty. The information gap had narrowed, but not enough to restore leverage. Others had already adjusted. The board had shifted while no one was looking. The turning moment came during a negotiation that felt subtly different. Terms were still polite. Language remained collaborative, but the balance had changed. Concessions were expected sooner. Timelines were framed externally. What was once a joint decision now felt like a proposal being evaluated. The billionaire felt it immediately. Control was no longer assumed. It had to be argued for. That realization landed with force. The delay, once meant to protect strength, had recast the empire as reactive, not excluded, but no longer central. The initiative would still happen, but not on the empire's terms. The emotional peak sharpened into resolve. The billionaire recognized that waiting further would not restore authority. It would only confirm its absence. Acting now carried cost. Acting later would erase relevance. In a decisive session, the billionaire named a reality without defensiveness. The delay had shifted leverage. The empire could either step forward now, accepting a narrower position, or remain patient and watch the outcome solidify without them. This was the final test, not of strategy, but of ownership. Choosing to act now meant acknowledging that control had already been reduced. It meant committing without the comfort of ideal timing. It meant accepting that the best moment had passed, and deciding whether the second best moment was still worth claiming. The billionaire felt the full weight of leadership settle. Power is not choosing when conditions are perfect. It is choosing when delay becomes surrender. The conflict resolved into a single, unavoidable truth. Waiting had redefined control. Only action could redefine it again. The next move would not restore the past, but it would determine whether the empire still shaped the future or merely adjusted to it. The climax arrived when the billionaire chose to act with full awareness of what had been lost and what still mattered. The decision was no longer about optimal terms or perfect alignment. It was about re-entering the arena before the outcome finalized without them. The move was decisive. Commitment was made publicly. Resources were deployed immediately. The empire stepped forward knowing leverage was thinner, influence reduced, and negotiation narrower than it once could have been. But action restored something delay had drained away. Presence. The response was swift. Partners adjusted. Timelines re-anchored. The initiative regained definition, not because conditions were ideal, but because someone finally committed to motion again. Control did not return fully, but relevance did. And relevance is a currency that keeps futures negotiable. The resolution unfolded with realism, not triumph. The empire accepted less favorable positioning. Some concessions remained permanent. The cost of waiting cannot be erased. But the greater loss, exclusion, was avoided. Internally, clarity returned. Teams realigned. Energy sharpened. Waiting ended. The organization stopped hovering at the edge of a decision and re-entered execution with purpose. Momentum did not surge instantly, but it stabilized. The billionaire reflected on the lesson with precision earned through consequence. Delay feels like control because it avoids commitment. But commitment is where control actually lives. Time is never neutral. It always chooses a side. By waiting, the empire had allowed others to shape the field. By acting, it reclaimed the right to participate in shaping what came next, even from a weaker position. The final insight settled quietly but firmly. Control is not preserved by hesitation. It is preserved by timely ownership. The empire moved forward changed, not restored to advantage. but restore to agency. And agency, once regained, keeps futures open, even when the past cannot be corrected. Because the worst position is not acting late. It is realizing too late that waiting already acted for you. Subscribe to join the journey.